said, but his cat's unused to success.
When you look at Thai culture in particular, within the context of Asian cultures in general, the cat is seen as being lucky. The cat is seen as indicating prosperity, the potential to make money, the potential to do good in business or in marriage or in whatever endeavor somebody starts.
Fet has what the Thai call a diamond eye, actually a rare form of feline glaucoma. A diamond eye is considered lucky, so to increase his prosperity, Fet's owner found another cat with the same condition and spent $28,000 to unite the lucky cats in matrimony.
There's probably a foundation in Thai culture to say that yes, cats are lucky and cats are good for business. So it's not surprising that somebody would have a big party and wedding for two cats that they think help their business.
Diamond eye is a curable condition, and Fet's owner has promised to treat the condition now that the wedding has taken place. We'll have more stories in the news next time. Now, here's what's coming up as Sightings continues.
What could be the source of these intelligent balls of light the pilots have reported seeing for 50 years?
There's a possibility that Foo Fighters still are guided and controlled, created by an advanced intelligence, not of this planet.
Okay, here goes. Yeah, it's changing color.
And you know what that means?
You were right.
We've got hard water.
If your soap won't lather well and your skin feels dry, you might have hard water, and then you need Zest. Soap leaves a drying film behind, but even in hard water, Zest rinses clean away for cleaner, smoother skin.
You're not fully clean and smooth unless you're Zest fully clean.
And for an incredible feeling of clean, try Zest Body Wash.
Long before Gina started thinking about pink or blue, she was thinking orange. 100% pure Florida orange juice. Because thanks to the March of Dimes, she knew the folic acid in orange juice may help reduce the risk of certain birth defects. So, before you start thinking about having a baby, think 100% pure Florida orange juice. Are you drinking enough?
That's my nephew Scruff reading that comic book.
Improving my mind.
Your magic zapper and I'll improve your mind.
Hey, that's me!
Look inside. It's about the adventures you have coming home from school.
Uh-oh.
It gives tips on what to do about bullies, finding drugs, or trouble on the bus. And it shows what happens to Scruff.
What happens? What happens?
You'll see. For your free copy, write McGruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60652 and help me take a bite out of crime.
What happens? What happens?
You're breaking my heart 'cause you're leaving. You've fallen for somebody new.
And you know how much you like the music of the 1970s.
The top 40 hits.
Classic rock anthems.
'Cause 2 out of 3, baby.
Disco Delight.
Now the greatest songs of the 1970s are finally here on Super 70s.
40 huge hits from the 70s Preservation Society, featuring... Super 70s.
It'll put a smile on your face.
To order, call the number on your screen or send check or money order. 2 CDs, $26.99. 2 cassettes, $21.99. Rush delivery available. Super 70s is not sold in stores.
Professional pilots, both commercial and military, do see UFOs. But the culture of silence within their ranks means the public almost never hears about it. There was a time, though, not long ago, when pilots who saw UFOs did talk to anyone who would listen. They were the fighter pilots and gunners of World War II, and they saw a lot of very strange things up there. World War II was the first great air war. Weapons of mass destruction were airborne, and technology was moving forward at an unprecedented rate. Axis and Allied powers were constantly on alert for the latest secret weapon. Germany had the V-1 rocket. England had advanced radar, an unblinking eye in the sky. And America was hard at work developing the ultimate weapon, the atomic bomb. And, says research scientist Richard Haynes, the belief that the other side could have developed just about anything may have concealed the largest mass UFO sighting in history.
There were sailors on ships. There were GIs on the ground in artillery battalions. There were German soldiers on the other side of the line. People from all sides of the war were involved and reported the same thing.
Pilots described them as seemingly guided balls of light. Bob Leroy, a member of the 11th Airborne in New Guinea, remembers his first sighting of the mysterious craft.
Suddenly I saw this ball about this size, that thing there about 3 feet in diameter, following this Japanese Betty bomber. And it started changing colors. I thought I had seen a new secret weapon. I had to agree with the rest of the guys because that's what they all thought it was. They didn't know any better. And nobody had ever heard of a UFO in '44.
They were spotted around the world and became known as Foo Fighters, from the French word for fire. According to Haynes, who has investigated hundreds of newspaper and eyewitness accounts, the descriptions of the Foo Fighters are disturbingly alike.
Pilots would report glowing, luminous balls of light that would come up from the ground, often orange or red, anywhere from 1 foot to 6 feet in diameter, would accelerate up to their altitude and then level off very quickly and then stay beside the airplane. They would fly either singly or in pairs or in trio or 4 objects, oftentimes in rigid formation, which is important. And all of these flight dynamics point in one way or another to a fairly high intelligent level of guidance.
Robert May was the tail gunner on a B-24 for the last 2 years of World War II. He vividly recalls a dangerous top-secret mission to drop guns and ammunition behind German lines. But it wasn't the nature of the mission that has stayed with Robert for more than a half-century. It's what he saw up there.
I spied something out there. It was kind of bright. Didn't know if it was an aircraft or what it was. I'd say it was probably traveling at a fairly decent speed, maybe 200 miles an hour, 300 miles an hour, and it was coming toward us, but it was coming in a bright light. That's what made it so odd that we could not identify. Because we all knew exactly whatever enemy aircraft was there, we knew what it was. It was very easy because that's one of the things we learned real quick like.
The Allies thought it was the Nazis that it was the Allies. Then the fireball showed up in Japan.
And here, from the November 1944 issue of the New York Times, is a very interesting case of a B-29 flying over Japan, and the flight crew saw several Foo Fighters.
Intelligence services for both Allied and Axis forces were hard at work trying to figure out where the Foo Fighters were coming from, says Mark Birdsall of UFO Magazine.
British intelligence was interested as well. They've released reports. They tried very, very hard to put a category on it, to classify it as a night fighter or an enemy bomber or something other than that, but it proved useless. They couldn't do it.
To this day, no one has figured out what they were or who made them.
I don't think there's any way that in 1943 or 44 or 45, terrestrial technology was advanced enough to produce the kind of flight dynamics, the containment of energy, the luminous output for as long as we're talking about here.
And Foo Fighters did not go away when World War II ended. Military pilots reported seeing them during the Korean War. And were it not for the code of silence of modern-day pilots, there might be continuing reports today. Take the case of this former Soviet fighter pilot who claims to have had an encounter with a Foo Fighter.
I gained altitude of 3,900 meters, and I saw a ball in front of me about 20 degrees to the right.
In 1991, Maxim Trerbakov was at the top of his class, fast on his way to becoming Russia's top gun. Then, on a training flight, Trerbakov said that he was chased by an aggressive UFO that sent his plane into a nosedive.
My altitude began to drop rapidly. I had to pull the plane out of the nosedive. At the altitude of 1,000 meters, I finally cleared the residential area and I ejected. 4 seconds later, the plane exploded.
Cherbakov's admission that he had seen a fireball under intelligent control cost him his career. For pilots around the world, this only strengthened their resolve to keep the code of silence. As a result, we are no closer to solving the Foo Fighter mystery than we were 50 years ago.
There's a possibility that Foo Fighters could have been, or still are, guided and controlled, created, produced by an advanced intelligence, not of this planet. But that is a difficult thing to prove, clearly. I'd like to simply let the evidence speak for itself and to continue to do research on the subject and then simply let the chips fall where they may.
It's important to remember that in the heyday of the Foo Fighter, the term flying saucer hadn't been invented yet. So pilots didn't have a standard by which to measure their encounters. In fact, the government panel that studied Foo Fighters in 1953 said, quote, if the term flying saucer had been popular in 1943, these objects would have been so labeled, unquote.
Next, messages of hope and help from beyond the grave.
It was almost like they glowed. And he had his arm around her and he just said, I've got her now, baby, and she's okay.
Mystery Science Theater 3000 has staggered back to life. Mystery Science Theater 3000. Saturday at 5 and 11 p.m. Eastern.
Mr. Sandman. Now, Malt Shop Memories. 36 of the most romantic songs to ever come out of a jukebox.
Since I met you, baby, 16 candles for a little food. Oh, yeah. All I have to do is dream. 'Cause I want
Call now for Malt Shop Memories. Cassettes $19.98, CDs $26.98. Have your credit card ready and call now.
The average funeral today now costs over $4,000, but the most Social Security will pay to your survivors, if they qualify, is only $255, leaving your loved ones to pay the balance. If you're age 50 to 80, you can protect your loved ones with Montgomery Ward Life's Mature Life Plan. It pays cash expenses at your family's time of need.
It's important to know my wife or kids won't be burdened if anything happens to me.
I didn't have to take a physical. I didn't even have to answer any health questions.
With the Mature Life Plan, you enroll by mail and you cannot be turned down for coverage.
I feel good knowing that we're protected by Montgomery Ward Life, a company we know we can trust.
Call now and get a free booklet explaining Social Security benefits and free information about the Mature Life Plan.
Call 1-800-641-7575.
If you believe in angels, you're not alone. According to a Gallup poll, more than half of all Americans do believe in angels. A lot of people believe that these angels are deceased relatives, a mother, father, or sister. And there are many incredible stories of people who have been saved by the whispers from a loved one from beyond the grave.
I heard a voice say to me, go outside and check the swimming pool.
Our youngest son, who's only 21 months old, Jonathan, was floating in the deep end of the pool, face up, but under the water, eyes wide open.
And I quickly ran to the side of the pool and screeched out Judy's name, and I jumped in the pool and pushed him to the side.
Fortunately, I pulled this huskily crying child out of the pool who didn't require any resuscitation. And Bill and I just wrapped him in our arms, and then later, Bill was able to tell me the story as we calmed down. He said, I don't know if you're going to believe this, but the only reason I went out to check the pool was because I heard the voice of my father say, go check the pool. And his father had died 33 years earlier.
Both Judy and Bill Guggenheim now say that it wasn't just a coincidence or a fluke memory that called Bill to the pool. It was a communication from the grave.
Bill was 8 years old when his father died, and yet he came back to save his youngest grandson, who is now 18 years old.
Bill and Judy have learned that what Bill experienced has a name, after-death communication, or ADC.
ADC is when someone is contacted directly and spontaneously by a loved one who has died. That is, the one who's made their transition chooses when and where and how to contact the person who's still physically alive.
After their son's miraculous rescue, the Guggenheims interviewed more than 2,000 people who had been touched by ADC and put their stories in this book.
So based upon our after-death communication research, we conservatively estimate that at least 50 million Americans have had one or more ADC experiences.
Pam Strickland and Susan Marshall are among those who have been touched by after-death communication.
I don't want to say it frightened me, but this was something that was way beyond any of us.
Of all the friends I had, she's the only one I ever stayed in contact with of all these years. She's my best friend in the world. I feel like she's my sister.
And that friendship moved to an even deeper level after they shared an ADC experience.
My mother had been terminally ill with cancer, and Susan and I had decided that after my mother had passed away, after I took care of some details, that I was going to come and stay with her and her family up here.
I loved her mother. I knew her mother very well, and Ruth meant a lot to me.
We were very close. There was a great deal of love there. She was very protective, extremely protective of me, and very, very nurturing toward me as well.
It was one afternoon in 1992 when Pam found out how strong her mother's love could be from beyond the grave.
I was leaving the house to go get some groceries. Susan had just gone in to take her 2.5-year-old son, Eric, to the back part of the house to give him a bath, and she had laid Sammy, her 6-month-old daughter, down for a nap. And just as I started to open the front door, I heard my mother's voice say, "You need to check the baby. She doesn't sound right." And my immediate reaction was, "You're hearing things." And I ignored it. I started to walk out the door again, got a few steps out the front door, and this time I heard, in a very stern, clear voice, "Pamela, you need to check the baby. She doesn't sound right." I turned around, peeked into the door into Sammy's room, and I looked into the crib, and her whole head and face were completely covered. I picked Sammy up. Her face was almost like a gray color. She, at that point, let out a big, deep gasp for air, and that's when I realized something special had happened.
Both Pam and Susan are convinced Samantha is here today because of ADC.
It was her voice that she heard, and I believe that Ruth said that to her daughter, for my daughter. And that's why she's here today.
I would have to say that most of the people that I see report an ADC experience in one form or another.
Dr. Kathleen Moore is a certified bereavement counselor in Orlando, Florida.
The study of ADCs is exciting because we all face the experience of bereavement at one point or another in our lives. And since so many people report this as an experience, it gives us another way to look at it and perhaps another way to help that person through the experience.
Mainstream science explains away after-death communication as grief-induced hallucination. But researchers ask, what about the cases where the ADC occurs before the death of a loved one is known?
There is no explanation that I can find of how somebody could have an experience first and then learn of the death afterwards and still call that a grief-induced hallucination, because they're not bereaved when they have the experience.
That was the case for Joanne Freeman, who was awakened in the middle of the night by a phone call about her daughter Kim.
When I answered the phone, it was the dispatch office at the police department, and they were telling me to answer the door. And so I was coming out of my bedroom when all of a sudden I saw this vision of Kimmy and her grandfather, who is deceased. They were like in a fog, and Kim was standing there right next to him, just smiling, as pretty as anything. It was almost like they glowed. You know, they were perfect. And they both just looked very peaceful, happy. And he had his arm around her, and he just said, "I've got her now, baby, and she's okay." It seemed like when I blinked, and I kind of shook my head because I was just amazed that I would see this, and when I opened my eyes back, it was gone. So that's when I came on down into the living room and answered the door, and the police were there. And they were informing me that Kim had been in an accident, and she was killed.
Although nothing can ever erase the pain of Kimmy's loss, the ADC experience helped Joanne come to terms with her grief.
I think seeing Kimmy like I did, I think it has helped me, and maybe that was God's way of telling me, you know, here she is, you know, you will get to see her one more time. And he let her tell me, you know, Mom, I'm okay. I don't know why it happened, but I know it happened to me. And, you know, so I will treasure it. You know, as long as I live, I will always treasure that. She will always be a part of my heart. She will always be a part of me.
You can't do this work without becoming emotionally involved in it. The accounts are just too moving, too sensitive, and too real to question that they may be anything but actual contacts by deceased loved ones.
Many researchers believe these spiritual encounters are simply a spontaneous memory of what a loved one would have said had they been there. But those who have had an ADC encounter insist that they've been contacted by a force that science will probably never understand.
Next, as the third millennium approaches, will we find spiritual enlightenment?
People are looking for greater opportunity to link themselves to something bigger than themselves.
Okay, guys, going out for lunch. You know the rules. Doggy bags for you. Oh, and Scooter, get off the counter.
Ericsson mobile phones. That's the power of voice.
Pets are so much trouble. Huh, not my little angels. 20 patients to go and one bad cold.
New Alka-Seltzer Plus liquid gels relieve your worst cold symptoms fast. Get Alka-Seltzer Plus liquid gels and get back to what's important. New Alka-Seltzer Plus.
There's a new Vlasic sandwich stacker cut bigger and thicker. For your biggest sandwiches, new Vlasic Super Stackers with more pickle taste and more pickle crunch. Got a super sandwich? Get a super stacker from Vlasic. Bigger pickle taste, bigger pickle crunch.
The year 2000 may be just a number, but all those zeros seem to be inspiring people to make predictions, think about the future, and contemplate the meaning of life and mortality. Combine the coming millennium with 70 million baby boomers, all of whom have reached middle age, and you've discovered why the search for enlightenment is big news and big business.
I think spirituality is really one of the hot topics today. And I think as we approach a new millennium, people are now drawn toward the hope that there's more to life, and that there's a possibility of putting life together in a way that is more creative and more satisfying to the human spirit than ever before.
Religion sociologist Wade Clark calls it the quest culture, a generation of seekers with an endless thirst for knowledge about the mysteries of existence. His research inspired Ruth to write a book about these lost baby boomers.
I think there's a quest for meaning, there's a quest for a sense of understanding about life, and more than just that, there's a quest for greater connectedness. People are lonely, people are looking for greater opportunity to link themselves to something bigger than themselves.
There's a tremendous hunger in America for spirituality.
Since 1977, Elizabeth Lesser has been feeding this spiritual hunger at the Omega Institute. The retreat provides eclectic workshops for people in search of meaning.
Our culture was dominated by rationalism, science. There was a whole movement to take anything religious out of schools. And there, of course, has been the whole materialism that's dominated the later part of the 20th century. So there's a great hunger in people for something of meaning in their lives. Places like Omega didn't create it. We grew up in response to a need.
People are trying to grow. They're trying to find new insight, ancient wisdom.
Nice, good, again?
First of all, people have more choices than ever. Some people have returned to traditional evangelical faiths. Many, of course, have looked to so-called New Age religions. Choice now means that one can pick and choose.
I call it the new American spirituality.
You can be a spiritual person without belonging to any kind of church. You can do Buddhist meditation and go on a Christian retreat and celebrate the high holy days and build your own path, a patchwork of the great wisdom traditions.
The search for meaning outside of the mainstream led Bill Elliott down a surprisingly traditional path. Haunted by the death of his parents as a small boy, Bill had been plagued by depression and anger until he decided to seek out the world's great thinkers and ask them to explain the meaning of life.
I thought that's what I'll do. I'll get the 20 wisest people and put them in one book and ask them maybe 20 questions about life, the questions most of us want to know about things.
Bill wasn't a professional writer, just a man in search of answers. So he borrowed a typewriter and sat down with a stack of paper and a sincere resolve to find humankind's place in the cosmos.
I typed up this letter, and then I typed in the name at the top, and it looked really bad. So I sent out all these letters, and my friends, a lot of them said, Bill, you know, it's not going to work. And I thought, well, maybe not. And they said, no, you know, Bill, you're nobody.
Amazingly, though Bill had no credentials, his heartfelt persistence paid off. Some of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century agreed to meet him and share their insights about the meaning of life and death.
When I interviewed Norman Vincent Peale, he said that he believes that there's a reason why we're each born and that we each have a purpose. And I believe if a person can at all come close to finding what their purpose of life is, I think it will change all of their life.
People are searching in many places to try to come to terms with their ordinary lives, and that spirituality, in the final analysis, is something very, very human. It's everyday life made meaningful, and that's what all of us want, to make some sense out of our everyday lives so that when you get up in the morning and look in the mirror, you have some motivation for the rest of the day.
It was Bill's overwhelming sadness about the untimely death of his parents that led him to seek out Buddhist leader the Dalai Lama.
At one time I thought to be enlightened or to be really wise meant that I would never be sad again, that I would be beyond being sad or beyond suffering. So when I asked him, is there anything that makes you sad in your life? And he said, I'm a man who's lost my country. And he talked about all the suffering that's happened in Tibet, all the people being killed. And he was very sad. For some reason, that helped free me because I realized that, boy, here there's this person considered very wise by a lot of people, and he's still sad. Oh, well, I guess it's okay to be sad.
The words of wisdom that Bill has gathered from around the world are in Tying Rocks to Clouds, a book that Bill hopes will provide solace in the coming millennium.
The deepest wish I had for my book was that that would help people in their life, because I know what it's like to be lost.
So many people have come to realize that they need something deeper within themselves. Let's call it soul, let's call it spirit. Something within themselves that gives them a sense of direction and some purpose and meaning for their life.
And while some have turned to an unorthodox approach, the fundamental search is the same within all of us.
If we understand the human quest to be one of search for meaning and for finding the sacred in everyday life, I don't think that one ever goes away. And I don't think the 21st century, or call it the third millennium, will fundamentally change the nature of that quest. It may take new forms, but that quest, I think, is here to stay.
So significant is this new kind of do-it-yourself enlightenment that sociologists have given it a name. Now, more than 30 million Americans, half of all the baby boomers, are in a new category of religious worship called believers but not belongers.
Okay, here goes. Yeah, it's changing color.
And you know what that means?
You were right.
We've got hard water.
If your soap won't lather well and your skin feels dry, you might have hard water, and then you need Zest. Soap leaves a drying film behind, but even in hard water, Zest rinses clean away for cleaner, smoother skin.
You're not fully clean
and smooth
unless you're Zest fully clean.
And for an incredible feeling of clean, try Zest Body Wash.
Beyond the edge of reality lies a story of ultimate conquest, a story of war and friendship. A story of a love that can never be. And a hatred that always was. And now, the most anticipated epic adventure of the year will never come to a theater near you. Final Fantasy VII.
PlayStation.
They move among us, cursed with an eternal bloodlust. Friday, cross the threshold between the living and the dead.
Dark thoughts, evil plans.
In a Kolchak double feature. Then, beginning Monday, immortality is theirs to behold.
See before you a man who's lived for centuries.
During 4 nights of classic fear, the legacy of Dracula. As Bloodlust begins on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Hello there. I'd like to welcome you to Psychic Talk USA.
What happened to you when you were 7 years old, sweetheart?
What happened to me when I was 7?
Yeah. What happened to you with your mom when you were 7?
She sent me to my father.
Yeah. That was a hard thing for you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Are you astounded by what this woman has just told you? Did you think that anyone knew that but you and your mother and your father?
Yeah. No, nobody knew it. She couldn't have known it.
You got a move coming up, a career move coming up for you.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to move overseas.
Well.
Oh,
yeah, I feel the same way you do. I want to get you involved right now. Yeah, I'm talking about you. So I want you to pick up your phone and call us right now. By calling right now, we promise you 10 minutes with our expert psychics at no cost to you at all. I mean, it's free. It's our treat. So why don't you call us now?
Call in now. Everyone will get to talk to their psychic for a full 10 minutes. This one's free, so don't miss it. Dial right now.
Call 1-800-579-2221.
Check in to the Dominion, the home of science fiction on the web. Welcome to the Edge.
If you've had a paranormal experience, please write to us at Sightings. Sightings can also be contacted at America Online at keyword Sightings. Download images, sounds, and QuickTime clips from Sightings episodes. On the internet, access information about sightings and the paranormal at sci-fi.com/sightings.
Until next time, remember, no mystery is closed to an open mind. For Sightings, I'm Tim White.